Hi everyone, welcome to the Leaders in Supply Chain podcast. My name is Fei Yu. I'm the Managing Director Europe at Alco Global. In today's episode, we'll have a chat with Nadine Kiratli-Schneider, VP Supply Chain Risk Management and Sustainability at Schaeffler. She previously headed corporate inbound supply chain, bridging logistics and sourcing for supplier criteria. With a strong background in research and a passion for effective solutions, Nadine combines science and business to tackle complex transport challenges. She's a strong believer in the power of diverse teams to make supply chain resilient and sustainable. Nadine, great to have you here with us.
Thank you, Faye. So honored to be here actually on your podcast. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thanks. In today's podcast, I'd like to go around the 3 whys. Why did you choose supply chain as a career? Why did you change from academia to industry? Why are supply chain risk management and sustainability so important for you and for our industry? Are you ready for that?
Absolutely. So where to start? It's lots of questions. I guess we're going to tackle them one by one. I also hope you're going to help me with that.
Let's maybe start with your unusual career path. So share with us a little bit about your unusual career path, your passion for academia, and then your switch to the industry.
Yeah. So that's kind of around this first question, right? This why did you choose supply chain as a career? Well, the question is, does a career maybe choose you? So I think in my case, that was almost it. I would love to tell the story that I studied logistics at the German army because I had a flyer back then at high school on my desk, sitting and actually considering to go to the German army and study logistics there. But my mom put a veto on that at that time. So I went then on with studying at Maastricht University because I was in the Netherlands, business school over there. I was freshly back from high school year in the United States. So full of international flair and that urge to speak English and, be in an international environment. And next to that flyer that kind of reached me, there was a promotion for the university's open day. So I came to Maastricht University for the open day to kind of feel and experience the campus. And I was just flashed away by the international flair of the campus with 50 nationalities. The curriculum was awesome, spanning general businesses to specifications such as supply chain management, marketing, and also the teaching concept was really, really great. Very small tutorial groups, 14, 15 students maximum, individual attention by a tutor for 8 weeks that the course would take. And I went for that, started my bachelor studies on international business, and there majored in organization management. And I completed the bachelor's there with my exchange semester in Istanbul, Turkey, to actually polish my father tongue a bit because I'm actually half Turkish, half German. Then went on immediately with a specification international business, strategic marketing. And that is where supply chain management came into the picture for the first time because it was strategic marketing, not the classical B2C marketing, but it actually also included lots of B2B elements. And those 2 or 3 courses I had that really caught my attention because it was all about the entire value chain that included back then defined as support function, supply chain management, and logistics. And after I completed my studies, I was not so sure if I could actually go and choose for a job right away because I felt like I'm not done learning about that B2B aspect of business. And I went with the flow because an opportunity came around and my thesis supervisor offered me to pursue a PhD degree actually in the purchasing and supply chain management realm. And it never had occurred to me that I would be able in the position to do or eligible for doing a PhD. So I gave it like 2 or 3 weeks of time, got to know the professor and jumped for it. And partly it was also due to the professor's background. He was 80% practitioner and 20% professor. And that was really intriguing because I knew he would actually be in touch with lots of practitioners and enable me to have a very practical or applied research project. So this was really great. I pursued on the topic of collective team creativity in purchasing and supply management area. And the question that we researched in a very practical applied way was how can you unlock the creative potential of teams in a procurement and supply management / supply chain management context. We focused there on creativity for two reasons. A, while kind of exploring what can I research? I mean, there's so much to do in supply chain management. I always intrigued with people, how people are working together, how they collaborate, how they can build upon each other's ideas, expertise. And so I accompanied my professor to a few firm visits, company visits for his own assignments. And I got to talk and mix and mingle with some of these C-suite executives. And something that was intriguing back then, I mean, it's like 16, 15 years ago now, something that was really intriguing to them was how to squeeze out innovation from their organizations and their suppliers. So they had invested all that money into programs for innovating and setting up initiatives, but the results were actually quite disappointing. And during some of these talks, I realized that the ingredient for innovation management, the creative part, the people actually making up the idea, that was neglected, that aspect. There was not too much time invested to it because also it was difficult to measure that aspect and to then also steer and manage it. So hence we invested then some time into developing a climate instrument to measuring the team creativity climate in these teams. We validated that in sourcing teams, in cross-functional sourcing teams, and also in a supplier-buyer context. And then we did some research on finding out what is actually driving this team creativity climate. And for sourcing teams, it was interesting. There was two factors. First of all, diversity, so the setup of the team. It was really all about having different functionalities coming together, because that not only one dominant function that represented can take over the conversation, but you're forced to kind of listen to the other person and accommodate to their perspective, and also explain your thoughts in a way that someone can work with knowledge that you have. And the second factor was leadership. And leadership had a very decisive role there. Leadership can kill, so break or make creativity. And that was really interesting to find out that leaders, especially in the beginning, have an important role. And the same thing we did in a supplier context. And we found out that it's a balance between relational governance mechanisms, so investing in the relationship with your suppliers, and contractual aspects, so such as NDAs, but leeway for people to communicate and exchange ideas that would make the difference. So that, to my research background, what I focused on back then, actually went on with an assistant professorship at the university that got offered to me. So I could actually deepen the research towards team creativity. And I got the chance also to teach on an executive level in the purchasing executive management program that our school offered back then and is still running today. And through the course of those 3 to 4 years of assistant professorship, I got in contact with so many companies that had so many interesting phenomena, challenges to address, that at some point I was like, wait a minute, isn't this also something for you? You really want to experience what you got a glimpse of once in a while when you were in the company collecting data and then, returning back to the company, giving them the results, some ideas on how they can use the results. And actually, through the conversations, I got suggestions by many people. Hey, why don't you come over to us and work for us? But then again, I loved academia so much that it took me 3 to 4 years, so to say, to make that decision. When I reached, so to say, a point where I had the feeling, now is the time when I don't try, I will never try. So I pushed myself out of the comfort zone and looked for an opportunity in my network where lots of companies were. And voila, here I am at Schaeffler. Schaeffler grabbed that opportunity to have me on board to build up their inbound supply chain team at the corporate level, which is, as you mentioned in your introduction, that bridging team between purchasing and logistics or supply chain. Because in essence, I had a purchasing understanding, but also supply chain management understanding. So I could translate between these two functions quite well. And that's more or less how I switched over. And that summarizes my career path so far.
Well, so from your introduction, it sounds like supply chain is sexy. It's it's also innovative, and it's a very leadership-driven, team-driven, very different from the traditional perception of supply chain, where people think, right, supply chain people are mainly the executor, right? But supply chain can be innovator.
Yeah, I think I'm biased because the way how I kind of got into that profession of purchasing and supply chain management is via that idea that it's creativity and innovation that is driving that entire profession, right? I think so. It's the angle that I kind of entered into that profession that maybe biased me, but also I was really surrounded in the Netherlands where I obtained all my academic education with a very open and can-do culture in business. I mean, it's first name, it's very dynamic, it's very active. It's let's try this new, let's do this. And I think it's my professional socializing, so to say, that biased me and groomed me in that way. And I'm very happy for that opportunity. And I think that it really showed me that work can really be fun. If you always can sustain that passion for a topic together with the people around you, it doesn't really feel like work, you know. That's why for me, supply chain management is sexy, as you said. And then the question is, but maybe we get to that later, is how do you view supply chain management? Is purchasing part of supply chain management? Is supply chain management a part of purchasing? I mean, there's kind of conflicting schools of thought about that. But I view supply chain management holistic, and logistics is one part of it, operations is one part, production and purchasing, and all of these elements, they need to communicate with each other in a holistic sense.
Okay. So what are your current responsibilities and priorities right now?
Currently, since April, I'm responsible for the corporate team working on risk management and sustainability. That we do, I have to explain the context of that briefly. We're focusing on transport activities for the time being. Within our team, we underwent some transformation and change where we had focus now set on transportation management to really concentrate the resources that we allocate across the entire organization. And risk management and sustainability are not new topics, obviously, but we decided that the current developments in the world and also climate targets that we have, and also the volatility of the business world, it's the VUCA world that we live in. And I think there's now even a new abbreviation. I always forget something with a B. The VUCA is a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? And that's not new. But we decided that amidst that, it's important to lift the responsibility for both of these topics up management-wise to the vice president level where I'm located, and to also strengthen the team resource-wise, FTE-wise. And what are we basically doing for risk management? Focusing on transport management activities. Our task is basically, the target is to make our transport supply chains resilient, in the sense that on an operational side, we need to screen, identify, assess operational risks when they are popping up. And operational risks typically are short notice and short term, such as the cyclone that's happening maybe in 2 days and hitting Hong Kong, or the hurricane season that we have currently in the States. But it can also be that vessel waiting times at ports are increasing because there's strikes at a certain major port, a seaport. Those things. So we need to screen for them, identify, assess, and also disseminate intelligence on them to find solutions. And that's the operational part. And the strategic part is kind of mid-long term, where it's all about identifying or being aware of potential structural risks that are happening. And they are typically of geopolitical nature. I mean, we have lots of these conflicts in the world right now. I think I have to list them here. Let's focus on positive things today. But it could also be that, we know for some reason that the transport infrastructure is changing in some way. And it's my team's responsibility, and we're building this up right now, to have a setup that allows us to operationally collaborate very closely with our regional transportation management teams across the globe in our 4 regions, AP, Greater China, Europe, and Americas. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we kind of, develop risk management and increase the maturity of how we do that. And on the sustainability side, that's also not new. Again, climate goals have been around for some time. But again, we decided to dedicate a team, fairly small, I have to say, but we're doing our best with the capacities that we have to establish a roadmap that helps us to decrease the emissions, our CO2 emissions from our transport-related activities according to our Schaeffler Climate Action Plan targets, which are the reduction of CO2 emissions by 25% until 2030, so nearly neutral. And that's obviously a major task that we, again, have to carry out together with our regional counterparts. because they're operationally responsible for transport, especially in the road sector. So it's a massive effort that we have to do here, because maybe we can touch upon the challenges of sustainability later on, and probably also sustainability and challenges that other companies relate to. What I can already say is that the infrastructure is not there yet to, for instance, electrify entire fleets of trucks. Charging infrastructure is one thing, manufacturing output by the truck manufacturers is one thing, hydrogen trucks is another thing that's still kind of in the pipeline for the next 2-3 years to come, right? To really have it in serious production. But then also, once there's a solution available, everyone is going for it, right? And we know how it's with the market, the market regulates itself. If many people want something, prices go up. So it's on many aspects a challenge, but it's a challenge that I've sought for when I left academia.
What are the 3 biggest risks for Schaeffler supply chain?
I would actually not reduce it to Schaeffler, but any supply chain. Maybe we can turn that in a sort of kind of advice or sharing insights from the risk management community, that I'm also connected with other companies. And typically what companies see is that it's the natural disasters that are picking up, obviously, because of global warming. So responsibility I have then to areas that kind of fertilize each other, right? If we manage to reduce CO2 reduction, not immediately that's going to help to reduce weather climates, but it's a tiny bit that we can contribute. So weather for sure, if it's a frequency of cyclones that we see. And there's also the true providers for risk management solutions that are doing briefs. And every now and then, maybe probably 4 or 5 times a week, I get invitations from left and right about, news briefs, how the weather is impacting supply chains. That's one thing for sure. Risk number 2 would be also top of mind for all risk managers in the transport area, geopolitical issues. So the conflict between Russia and Ukraine obviously is one that is keeping all risk managers, but also purchasers, obviously, up at night. And as you mentioned, also what is also, of course, important is the situation in the Middle East.
Yeah,
that's, of course, now adding on top of it. So those things make it, of course, very, very important to have an outlook on how things are developing, and where on the planet there's other conflicts that could potentially either block transport routes or make crossing of borders more difficult, or that there's embargoes that are put on it, right? There's different repercussions that follow from these geopolitical issues.
Yeah.
And number 3, it's typically structural things, either that could be port strikes that could be observed in the news the last half year, the west coast of the United States, for instance, but also structural things such as the Panama Canal or the Suez Canal. Those are typically to be breaking points that must be on the radar of risk management and supply chain managers. But that is beyond Schaeffler.
So from these 3 risks, right, I think that especially risk number 1, the natural disaster, it's very relevant for sustainability.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what is the supply chain role for sustainability? What can supply chain contribute and innovate to drive that agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a transport point of view, because that's the focus that we have, obviously there's also products, right, that need to be designed in a sustainable way. But we're in our team, we're focusing on the transport activities, so CO2 emitted from that. What can we contribute? I mean, there's a few overall strategies that you could use. Of course, the best is to avoid any transportation, which is not an option per se, period. But what you can do is you can reduce. That's kind of the second way. And how can you reduce? That's by smartly consolidating your transportation volumes. That means that requires, of course, a transparency over what you are transporting, from where to where, with which volumes, which weight, because it could be that, especially Schaeffler, we have heavy parts, could be that the weight is already filling the container. You could stuff other things into it that are lighter, but then it's a question if you have the parts, right? If you want to fill a container yourself in terms of full container load, FCL. So that's one thing. What you can also do is that you can work on rerouting, right? That you optimize your physical network in such a way that you reduce the distance between locations. And that goes also very nicely in hand with consolidation of freights where possible, right? Sometimes it's not possible due to the production cycles of the different products that we're transporting that need to be harmonized. So at some point, you need to also make trade-offs, right, between speeds and capacity utilization. So those are options without basically paying any buck, right? And that's typically where you start. And then, of course, the next game changer is the technology, right? So it's truck technology or fuel type or truck technology. You can also, so regarding fuel types, it could be both for trucks, but also for ships. So for the mode of sea and also road, there you have options. And we're talking about biofuels here, bunker diesel, anything that is changing the CO2 balance of transport modes to a better one. So taking off some CO2. But the ultimate game changer, obviously, is new technologies, such as battery electric vehicles. You have also hydrogen trucks that are on the rise. But of course, the solutions are still rather expensive compared to regular combustion engine diesel trucks, for instance. So it's all a matter of timing, setting priorities, and applying a mix of levers that are available to logistics to reach climate goals. So in that sense, I come back to what you said, that supply chain management, it's sexy, it's interesting because you have so many levers that you can pull. Is it easy to pull them? No, because most of the time you cannot decide over things yourself. If you are in a lucky position to, I don't know, change just the infrastructure or the network of your company, go for it. But if someone else owns that infrastructure and someone else is kind of, managing the transports, then of course that demands collaboration. And that is the interesting part of it, that you need to find compromises, you need to communicate, you need to collaborate with people, and you need to find the sweet spot where everyone agrees. And as small as that point of agreement might be, it's a starting point for the conversation ahead. And that has been lots of fun the past 3 years in industry in general, but especially since April, the new challenge of sustainability and logistics.
We need more people like you to tell the story, right? About how sexy supply chain is for young people. Because then there is this meaning there. Supply chain is contributing hugely to sustainability.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
the supply chain community is not very good in telling that, to promoting that, to attract new talent into this ecosystem.
Yeah, might be a new business avenue for Alcott Global, right? To kind of focus on the talent side.
We're doing that.
That's great.
We'll do that. You come from academia, right? What can the industry learn from academia in supply chain?
Oh, that is a very good question, Faye. And I'm happy that you asked that, because I haven't had too much time to discuss with people that question inside the company. It's just because we're so busy doing so many things that are so relevant, but that seems to be the same everywhere. I think what can be learned from academia is that holistic perspective on things. So, because I mean, it comes with a profession. As an academic, by default, you are allowed, you have to think holistic, you have to think broad to understand the context in which you are investigating a problem. If you or a challenge or a problem statement, if you don't do that, you didn't do a good job as a researcher. So you have to, no matter how small the question is, you need to situate into the context in which you are investigating it. Otherwise, reviewers, during peer review processes, if you, would like to publish an article, that's what's happening. You present your work, and then people give you feedback on, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? You didn't take care of this. You ignored the context in which you're doing this. And sometimes I wish that in companies, but that does not apply for Schaeffler only, but that's something that I also observed in other companies while I was doing my research as PhD candidate and as assistant professor, that there's, of course, time reasons, right? But for some reason, not the patience to invest sometimes into, I don't want to say that companies don't think into like in mid and long-term ranges. On the contrary, they have to, and they do, right? I mean, look at all of these reports that are published by companies, strategies, visions, but it's more on a day-to-day basis that you allow yourself to take on a problem, sit together with a diverse set of people, let's say from provider management, from non-production material purchasing, from risk management, sustainability, and really take 2 to 3 hours time and really be there, present in the moment, and discuss, okay, what problems do we have? What opportunities are there? What resources do we have? What time do we have? And let's make a holistic plan. that is really something that I strive for doing this with my team and also adjacent teams. And we're getting better at that, I have to say. But that is really something that I would advise companies to do. Take more time and take the courage to take that time, stand still for a moment, build in these moments. And if you have issues to do that, because it's of course difficult to think holistically, right? If you've been with your head down and doing all of these important things and firefighting there and saving costs over there and making sure the operations are running there, it might be difficult to actually pick up your head and look left and right and maybe behind and ahead what's going on around you. Look for someone outside, maybe from a university nearby. I mean, every company is surrounded by universities. If it's applied universities, technical universities, you name it, and invite people over. Make sure that you network with them, this outside in perspective. It's so important for testing, validating your approaches, but also seeing, does it still resonate with the younger base? And who's that? Students, who are the managers, specialists, experts, and leaders of the future, right? So I think that's something companies could definitely still learn from academia.
I think you touched two parts that is in the chain model. One is holistic, the other one is adaptable, right? To the new generation.
Now that you say it, yeah.
From the source to source, right? There is a chain
Yes.
model, collaborative, holistic, adaptable, influential narrative.
Yeah.
The two part that is already covered. Love that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Also this, if I may add to this, the storytelling part, right? You just mentioned the narrative part, the N in the chain. That's also very important. It's people that you're working with. It's good to have facts and figures. That's great. That's the baseline for any good, like managing a problem. But you need to also reach the people. If you're able to tell a story to people, a story that has meaning for them and where they see they can be part of, that's the buy-in that you need to get from them, right? So that's why I really appreciate that N in the chain model.
Yeah, thanks. You are a working mother. You make fast track in academia and also in industry. Now you work in industrial sector where there are typically men, and in supply chain, even more men there. How did you do that to make a fast track in both worlds?
That's not so easy to answer. How did I do that? I didn't think about it, to be honest. It came along. Like similarly, what I said about the PhD, I didn't plan to do a PhD. It kind of it came to me, the opportunity, and it's all about, I think life is all about seizing opportunities or letting them pass because you feel like it's not the right opportunity. So I think how I got here was a set of opportunities that were presented to me, either because someone saw the potential in me. So there's this famous saying, hire for potential and then groom for performance. And that certainly is the case with Schaeffler. In academia, I think I followed a certain flow. I very much listened to my gut feeling. And I mentioned earlier that after my bachelor's and the master's, I thought like, I'm not done yet. I haven't seen a few things. And university context, especially Maastricht University, where I obtained my education, they allow you to go into businesses and actually experience what business is all about, doing case studies, presenting in companies, for companies, doing research projects or actual projects for them. And then when it comes to combining this with a family life, with two kids, two girls, I think if you have a passion for something, and that's also something that I said in the beginning, you don't need to think about it too much. It's like you have enough energy to sustain both. Obviously, I do have to say I think I listened to one of your previous podcasts and I had to smile when I listened to the CEO of On, Valen Shoes. And she said that it takes a family to raise kids, right? And that's exactly it. You need a stable social system around you. And that system is made up of friends, very close friends and family. So it's people, again, people, relations. It's a structure. So you need to really plan ahead and to make sure that while I'm away, because I commute 500 kilometers one way to work for three days a week, you need to make sure that everything is in order when you leave. And it's trust. Trust in the relationship, of course, with your partner, trust in the strength and the ability of your kids to see what you're doing as parents, to also give them, the opportunity to thrive, right? And that's also important for me, that they see, especially as two girls, They see, hopefully, let's see what they say in a few years when they're teenagers, that they have a role model to see someone like a working mom, as you said. I would like to refer to working parent. I don't like this distinction between working mom and working dad, not so much, I have to say, because we're all working parents, right? We're people. And that is really driving me. That's giving me energy because I can show them it's possible. If you want to do it, you can do it. You have to work for it hard, sometimes very hard, and there's a few sacrifices. But if you want to, there's people around you who can support you. There's people who trust you, and it's not easy, but eventually you'll get there. I think that's it's not very structured, the answer that I gave now. So it's kind of I never really thought about that question. So I think that resonates in the way how I answered. It's
I like your attitude. It's just let it come, embrace the challenge and fight. Right. So the attitude
yeah,
of so hungry to learn, very curious,
yeah, exactly.
to embrace changes and fight for your chance, fight through the challenges. And I also see that you, with your mindset, you connect a lot of dots. Also, you say the people and plan and trust and then work connected, make a meaning out of the dots. That's a great advice. Any specific advice you would like to give to female professionals in supply chain?
Yeah, advice to female. I think it could be for females, but I think it applies to anyone, human beings. Again, I don't like to think in categories so much. To be honest, until I joined the industry, I never really thought about the fact that I'm a woman, but that does seem to make a bit of a difference. And I'm trying not to let it be a difference. Let's put it this way. I hope I put it very diplomatic enough. I hope people know what I mean. I think it's all about keeping the joy in the things you do. If you have joy and also you see the sense, the purpose in what you're doing, you're at a good place. Once you start losing that for too long, because there is times where that is gone, and that's clear, right? Then it's just a matter of finding out, is that structurally gone? Or is it just a phase? Because there's lots of, it's peak season. There's lots of things happening at the same time. We're all human beings. We're not robots, right? It's time to then reflect and really see, okay, is this structural? Is this temporarily? If it's temporarily, it's good. You build resilience, personal resilience. You learn from it. It makes you stronger, and then on to the next challenge. If it's structural, for whatever reasons, and it's not about blaming anyone, then you need to also take up the responsibility for yourself and make changes to your life, whether that is in a personal setting or professional setting. And I think, especially for females, then maybe in that setting, there's so many expectations that you have to meet. I think once in a while, it's fair enough to give oneself a tap on the shoulder that everything's okay and that you can be open about insecurities, vulnerabilities. But there, it's really important that's the second maybe advice or thing that I learned, that you have someone that you can trust. If it's maybe a peer in your leadership team, if you happen to be in a leadership team, if it's a good colleague in your department, outside the department, that you can share the bright but also the dark moments, that helps, because it will show you're not alone, and that actually more people are in situations like that, but not everyone talks about it. And that can be actually very, very healing. And the last is, I don't want to make it sound too harsh, but when I say it, don't accept boundaries you don't see. So don't let anyone create boundaries that you didn't have yourself. You have enough to do to break down your own boundaries in your own head. And we all know, if we can use one stereotype, that maybe women typically, and that actually research shows that, typically tend to underestimate their skills, right? So especially females, women have a hard time breaking down their own boundaries. Don't let anyone add to those boundaries. That's difficult. And that's, I think, something that many people probably will understand what I'm talking about. And I think it also applies to men, to our male colleagues. And I just would like to encourage people and invite people to be more open to each other and support each other, because we're all sitting in the same company boat, at least. We're all sitting on the same planet when it comes to sustainability. We have one common goal that we can all strive for. Try to find that common goal, find that small point of agreement, and then go on together. That would be my wish. It's not an advice, it's a wish, and that's the vision that keeps me going, actually.
Very inspiring. I love that. What are the major three qualities you look for in the supply chain talent of the future?
Yeah, that's not so easy. I think I'm not working down a list when I meet someone, a potential candidate. It's more a feeling that I get. And if I need to verbalize that feeling, it's first of all the connection, an authentic connection that I feel with that person. And then of course it matters a bit if that's a person that will work as part of my team, or if it's a person that will work in an adjacent team that works closely with us, or a random position. But if that connection, that authentic connection is not there, and I don't feel they mean it, they're genuine, it becomes difficult to, to see beyond. Why? Because with that connection comes trust. With that trust comes openness to exchange about the interests of a person, the aspirations of a person, really honestly exchanging about the competences they really bring to the table, but then also openly, without fear of or fear of being blamed for, speaking about, deficiencies is the wrong word, development fields, right? That someone is able to say, you know what, this is something I'm not good at yet, but I would really like to develop it. And I think if you have that sort of conversation, you can take off connection. There's a trust established, an openness, and then an exchange about what the work is about. And if the person is really fit to it, and maybe there's a gap to that fit, but you can work on it, I think that is kind of the recipe for me to look for talent.
Thanks a lot. I have one last question. What is your life motto, Ante?
Better together. I think you could have guessed.
Better together. Nice. Yeah,
that's actually one of the hashtags that I use in my LinkedIn post. Lately, I haven't been posting too much because I've been very busy working. But hopefully, I'll start to share a few more stories and look for the hashtag Better Together. That's me.
Go that Better Together. Really good. I think this could be the name of the podcast.
Better Together.
But
that's great. I love
it. We
have
many keywords about this podcast. Nadine, thank you very much for sharing your insights and a lot of motivating words with the audience. Great to have you today.
My pleasure to be here, Faye, and happy to be contacted in case of questions or need for connection and sharing.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to go to alcottglobal.com and click the podcast button for all the show notes of the interview. Also, subscribe to our mailing list to get our latest update first. If you're listening to a streaming platform like iTunes, Spotify, or Stitcher, we would appreciate the kind review. 5-star works best to keep us going and our production team happy. And of course, share it with your friends. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so do feel free to follow me. And if you have any suggestions on what to do and who to invite next, don't hesitate to drop me a note. And if you're looking to hire top executives in supply chain or transform your business, of course, contact us as well to find out how we can help. Thank you very much.